Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jack Brewster. He is the founder and CEO of Newsreel, an interactive news app designed for attention spans in the digital age. A former journalist for Forbes and NewsGuard and a Fulbright researcher on how the internet is rewiring our brains. Jack is on a mission to make news simple, engaging, and impossible to ignore. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Jack. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about fixing news for short attention, making news for the TikTok generation, fix it for the TikTok generation. We'll talk all about this. But before that, let's talk a bit about you, Jack, about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Of course, yeah. So I'm a journalist. I used to work at Forbes magazine. I covered the second Trump campaign and as well as like online extremism. Left there and went and did a Fulbright on where I researched some of the topics behind Newsreel and the startup that I'm going to talk about today. And then I went to a company called NewsGuard, which is another startup that fights misinformation online. And I covered everything from QAnon to the way that TikTok pumps misinformation to young users to stories that impacted the 2024 election. So that's my reporting background. But I've always been fascinated by the way that the internet is changing the way that we think and what journalists can do to respond to it. And so that's mainly why I'm here today on your show, is because I think I have some insights into how the internet is affecting the way that we think and what we can do about it as news consumers, as just people, or as journalists.
Absolutely, Jack. A lot of people do not watch news because they find they have different feelings about it. Mm-hmm. They want to be informed, but several of them feel that, it's more about opinion, it's too opinionated, and it's only one side. The balance and perspective, objectivity is missing, and there are so many, everyone understand it differently. But and that is why perhaps also the new generation, they are busy in their own life. They have to make their future. They do not want to. Many people call the present news, as toxic. Also, they do not want to be. You call it that it is not the problem of content, but the design, especially from a new generation perspective. Why do you call so big? Many people do not watch news in the same way they used to watch before. That's because of the content, obviously not because of the design. But I want to get your perspective specifically about fixing news for the new generation.
Yeah, so we're in this weird paradox, right, where we have access to more information than ever before, but I don't really think we're better informed. We're encountering news and information more and more. We're spending more on devices that feed us media than ever before, right? Our phones, the average screen time, depending on the age you are, but can range from anywhere from a few hours a day to more than 6 hours a day. So we're in this weird time, right, where we have these devices that are glued to in our pockets that we're using more and more. But I don't think that we're really reading more better or understanding the world better around us. In fact, I think we're moving backwards in a lot of ways. And so the reason why I say that that our information literacy crisis is a design problem is that I don't think the content has gotten worse. I necessarily. I think there's always been people who have been trying to grab our attention and give us misinformation or low quality content. But the big change in the last 10 years or so has been that now our newspaper stands are not magazines and newspapers, but TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And these social media platforms and even the phone itself were never designed to be used as newspapers. They were never designed to be hardcore information devices. They were just designed to connect us and to if you're on social media, to advertise to us. So it's no wonder that we feel like news has become so negative and so polarizing, and we find it harder and harder to sit and pay attention to something. It's because these platforms, these devices, were designed to do in many ways the exact opposite of what we're using them for. And so if you're on social media because you want to see funny memes and animal videos, it's perfect for that. If you want to be find things to buy, it's also perfect for that. Is if you're there to learn about the world around you, these platforms and devices often fall short.
Absolutely. So let's understand it from your newsreel perspective. What is it that the young generation especially want? Why do you want them to know so much about news? Don't you think they are amply informed about the world, or is it that you want something specific for them to know about? Tell us through newsreel. How have you designed it? How is it attracting the new generation? What is it that they are looking into it?
Yeah, no, great question. So my goal with Newsreel is to help people start a relationship with high quality news. I think there's this misconception that young people are getting the news that they want from social media because algorithms are designed to give you exactly what you want. And I think there's a misconception just more broadly that young people like social media and are really happy with it and think that it's a great way to get information and spend their time. Study after study after study shows that people ages 15 to 30 are really dissatisfied with social media, and they understand the risks that these platforms pose on their attention spans and their anxiety levels and many other things. So I don't think people are happy with our current information choices that we have. And my goal with Newsreel is to present a way that that young people can start a relationship with news, keep a news habit, or start a news habit. And the way that we've designed it is to be like if social media and legacy news came together and had a baby. Like that's the easiest way I can describe it. So it takes some of the tools that social media uses to keep us engaged, to spark our attention, and we applied it to high quality news. So Newsreel is somewhat gamified. It has a habit tracking streak system. So you can, once you start using it, you can track your stats on how long you've been reading the news, how many days in a row. It also asks you quiz questions on what you just read. So it's trying to turn news from a very passive experience into an active one, which I think is how most people get their information, for better or for worse, on the internet today. And so all I've done is to try and sort of mimic that experience and try and bring it to something that's more high quality, right? All the news is produced by us. It's produced by journalists with a legacy news background. And that's my goal, right? Is I think there's an inherent value to legacy journalism and just traditional journalistic practices. And I want to try and bring that to young people.
Right. Now, the earlier generation, they would say, we used to watch news. Now we don't want to watch because it's not the way it is that we used to watch. And to a point, it also almost like, borders on toxicity. That's one of the reasons. But the young generation, they have their own way of living life. They have not watched that news why are they avoiding the traditional way news is being? Is it that do they find it the same way that the earlier generation feels, or is it that they do not have interest in the news, or is it that they have the interest in the news but they do not have interest in the content? But as you say, it is the design and not the content. Help us understand a bit about their mind. How is it working?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of young people feel like the news is just completely overwhelming for one, and so they don't want to engage with it for that reason. Another reason is they have a distrust of legacy institutions giving them news, and we've seen that be a trend that's happened over the last few decades, at least in the U.S., but also in the world as well. There's a huge distrust of institutions, and I think a lot of young people feel that they don't understand the value of news. Third, I think that they're not really sure how it impacts them or how they can use it. And yes, there is some concerns about polarization and bias as well. But I think all of these things, not to sound like a broken record, but can be traced back to the way that we've completely changed the way that we're delivering news. 15, 20 years ago, like you were still getting your news from the source from, various like news sources. And now we've completely unbundled the newspaper, as I like to say. Like we've taken it and just completely exploded the way that blown up the way that we deliver news and information, so that nobody really has much of a connection to any particular source. Like if you ask young people, where do you get your news? I find that like 9 times out of 10, you'll hear TikTok or Instagram. And then I'll ask, like, can you name like the sources where you're getting your news? Like, which accounts do you like on those platforms? And again, 9 times out of 10, I'll just get like a blank stare, and they'll say, I don't know. Like I just get my news from TikTok and Instagram. So what are they saying? They're saying they don't really have much of an affinity, much of a connection for any particular news source on those platforms. They're just, basically adopting this kind of like news finds me mentality, where I'll hop on Instagram, I'll hop on TikTok, and if I see news, I see news, and if I don't, I don't. But I don't really like have a particular connection to any particular person or especially entity. And so I think like that's been a huge driving force behind like a lot of the mixed feelings that people feel about news, is that like when you ask them like, oh, do you have trust in the media? Well, what's the media now? I think there's just like very hard to like drill down what that really means for people. If you ask them like, hey, do you trust this particular source? You'll get a very different answer. And they may trust, Joe Rogan, but they don't trust the media. And I think that's another big thing I think to sort of to mention, is that like these terms get tossed around the media, journalists, creators, and defining what they mean, I think is really key for talking about this particular issue.
Right. So just as they have their own understanding of what media is, what is news for them? What do you think they look for in terms of news, or expect in terms of news? Because for everyone, news is different. Maybe it is related to work. We traditional people will think of, okay, maybe what's happening in the world, in my country, or in business, or anything that impacts me. What is it that young generation consider as news?
It's a great question. I think, yeah, it definitely is very different from older generations. I think young people honestly think of news as being anything from a meme to a entertainment podcast to regular newspaper. Like there's many different ways to get news and information now, and it can be delivered next to a meme or in an entertainment podcast. I mean, that was a story here of the U.S. election in 2024, is that a lot of these entertainment podcasts or sort of lifestyle podcasts were actually the ways that a lot of young people in particular were getting their news. So if you're a podcaster, maybe you talk about fitness for 90% of the podcast, and that's how you sort of build up a relationship with your audience. But then maybe you talk about the 2024 election for 10% of the podcast, and that is the way a young person says that they might get their news. I mean, a lot of Joe Rogan's podcast, for instance, is not necessarily talking about current.
Right, right, Jack. Are you there? I'm not able to hear you. Yes, Jack. Can you hear me? Okay. Waiting for Jack. Looks like to be some technical problem. Talking about news for the young generation. Hopefully, he will join back. And it's a nice discussion talking about what news is for the young generation and what they actually look at news. That Jack was helping us understand. He has got something called Newsreel. That is what he is producing for the especially for the young generation to make them interested about all this in the meantime. Yes, Jack is.
There we go.
Yes,
Sorry
Jack.
about
Yes,
that.
Jack.
We had a
Nice.
brief interaction. We had a brief
No
interruption.
problem. This is part of the whole game. So you're talking about what news is for the young generation, and
Mhm.
you explained it well. But then you see, you also talk about democracy for us people. Like for me, for example, today my news, I would be wanting to understand better about say President Donald Trump. He is supposed to sign a executive order about prescription drugs,
Mhm.
cutting price from as much as 30% to 80%. Now, that is big news. In India, also, the markets have reacted to such things. Markets will react every other place, and everybody will try and understand the
Mhm.
fine print of what exactly it is all about, how it is going to be implemented, what it means for different. Now, that is
Mhm.
news for a lot of people. Do you think the young generation also understands or will want to understand things from that, because it impacts that them? Every family gets impacted because of medicines and all that stuff. I'm just taking one example. How do you decide about the newsreel? Help us understand. Then it can be very tough for
Mhm.
actually catering to their needs or understanding. You may think democracy is important, say they should know news about these things, but do they also think the same way? I do understand there might be several of them, but when you are catering it in terms of as a business also, you have to see the right kind of business
Mhm.
model. How what sort of mind do you apply to actually prepare it's not a newsletter but a bulletin or something like that? Help us understand about that, Jack.
Yeah, no, it's a really tough question. I think the strategy that we've taken is like we do see the value in like human editors, and so Newsreel is not algorithmically based. Like we don't use like AI to feed like personalized news. Like we do see the value in an editor, and I think that the perspective that we take is that we're trying to deliver news for people who are news curious, that are not used to sort of hardcore news like the one that you just talked about, the executive order that Trump signed yesterday about prescription drugs. So they're coming to us because they want to like understand those issues more deeply. That they need to be democratic citizens, right? Like in a democracy, like there are like basic requirements, I think, to sort of understand like what your representatives are doing, what the president is doing. And so we take a strategy of trying to sort of get people engaged who are maybe not already doing so. Maybe they see headlines, maybe they encounter news on their feed every now and again. So we're taking the perspective, okay, 18 to 30-year-olds, like what is the base level of information that they need to sort of think of themselves as being informed, to engage in conversations in schools and at work. And so like a lot of our issues are about things that impact young people: climate change, the future of work, AI, Donald Trump, and other topics like that. So, like, yes, like, can we cover everything in the world that every single person is going to want to know about? Absolutely not. And they will always have social media, Google, AI to go to if they want that sort of abundance. They want every topic. They can always get that. I think that's not what we're trying to do, right? We sort of are saying the reality here is that there always have the sort of world of the internet, right? This sort of like infinite information source. That's not the problem that we're trying to fix. We think that people want a shared place that they can come to understand the world around them, and they want help keeping a habit in doing so. And that's what Newsreel is trying to do. So the other thing too, I haven't mentioned, is that we work with schools. That's been our first customer. So we offer Newsreel as a news source for their students or their library patrons, and the professors can get stats on how their students are reading the news. So not only are we offering the end consumer, the reader, stats about how they're reading their news, but also the professor as well. So that's another way that we're sort of trying to create this sort of shared news experience.
Absolutely, Jack. So that looks like to be the future of news. Do you think newsreel sort of news, presentation will be the future of news?
I think niche communities will be the future of news, and Newsreel is one of them. We're not going to be everything. We're not trying to be. But if you feel overwhelmed by news today, if you feel like you can never keep a habit of opening up a newsletter that you know you should be reading, or of watching your show, or of just engaging with the high quality information on a steady cadence, then Newsreel is for you. I built Newsreel not only for other people, but for me as well. Like, I grew up with very bad ADHD, and I felt, even as a journalist, that it was tough to sort of continually consume news or watch news or take in information that I needed to sort of participate in conversations about the world around me. So in that case, like, Newsreel is for you. But I think the future of news, yes, is Newsreel, but also is these sort of niche communities. It's creators like yourself. But it's also, I think, an opportunity right now to sort of redefine the next era of news consumption, where we've been had a world dominated by Facebook and TikTok now, and Instagram as well, which is owned by Facebook, and I think that's going to change. I really feel like with AI now, we're entering an era where people can really rapidly create their own apps and social networks that will sort of have a more stratified information ecosystem that will, in some ways be worse, but it also present an opportunity for places like Newsreel to redefine news consumption.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's much to understand about this from you, Jack, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more about Newsreel. Watch Newsreel the way it is. Where to watch Newsreel? What is the best way to get it onto their phones? Help us understand which is the best way to do that.
Yeah. So we're currently, we've been prototyping it, so it's going to be rolled out to people. So if you just go to newsreel.co and sign up for the wait list, you'll get access to Newsreel on a rolling basis during the course of this year. And so that's the best way to if you're interested in Newsreel, to follow us. You can also follow our Instagram or TikTok, or follow me on LinkedIn, or follow our page on LinkedIn as well, which is newsreel.co is the name of our site. And our app is not available yet for just regular consumers on the App Store, but if you sign up for the wait list, you'll get access shortly.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.